Welcome back everyone. Today I'm back with the Fargo Souls mod, talking about more goofy, stupid, overpowered items because the Fargo's developers seem to only have thought about whether or not they could, and not if they should. Of course, I'm over-exaggerating a little, but it is true that some of the items in the mod have very unique effects that could easily be super broken if unrestricted. My example for you today is the Adamantite Enchantment, an accessory in the mod available as soon as you can get Adamantite at the beginning of hard mode. It only requires an Adamantite armor set and a small collection of pre-hard mode weapons to create. The effect of this accessory is to split projectiles in two. The damage of the projectiles are reduced, even more so if they're homing projectiles, and the spread of the projectiles increases the longer you use your weapon. To offset these nerfs, the projectiles are given armor penetration equal to half of the weapon's damage and hit twice as fast, which is apparently done by reducing the immunity frame timer of weapons with local immunity frames, or giving local immunity frames to weapons that don't have them. It sounds intriguing as is, but we're not cooking yet. We can actually enhance this effect with another accessory, which happens to be another enchantment. This is the Wizard Enchantment, also a hard mode item, even with all pre-hard mode components in its recipe, as it needs to be crafted at a crystal ball. This enchantment enhances a single other enchantment in the accessory slot directly below it, usually making its effect stronger in some way, or sometimes providing a completely new effect. In this case, the Adamantite Enchantment now causes projectiles to split twice, and has a stronger damage nerf. This is the secret sauce, and the Adamantite Enchantment, powered up by the Wizard Enchantment, creates some very powerful combinations with certain weapons, and also just has some cool interactions with a lot of items. It works with almost anything you could consider a projectile, standard arrows and bullets, and all kinds of magical and melee projectiles. It even applies to some things that I hadn't even thought about before seeing, with summons like the twins and accessories that provide ranged attacks like the Chlorophyte enchantment also having their projectiles split. And that's really cool, it's a fun effect, but how strong can this accessory actually get? I'm sure there are a ton of different weapons that you can boost and get good results with, but there's a couple of specific examples that I used myself to great effect, specifically because they were able to circumvent one of the downsides of this item, the projectile spread. When you use a weapon affected by the Adamantite Enchantment, the spread of projectiles increases as you continue to attack, and will decrease when you aren't attacking. The point of this is to control what is obviously a large increase in potential damage output. And the intention, or what I imagine is the intention, is to have players attack for large bursts of damage, and then stop to allow the projectile spread to reset after it widens and the extra projectiles start missing a lot more, not counting homing weapons which are already extra nerfed. So to get the most value here, all we have to do is find a weapon that doesn't give a shit about all of that. And there just so happens to be two in the Souls mod that I made use of during my ongoing playthrough that basically fall right into your lap. They're both boss drops, the Twin Rings being dropped by the Twins, and the Destroyer Gun being dropped by the Destroyer. The Twin Rings are a melee weapon that fires fast-moving boomerangs that either explode into cursed flames or shoot lasers directly at the cursor, depending on whether you click the right or left mouse button. The Destroyer Gun is a summon weapon that fires a destroyer, multiple destroyers, that get bigger the more summon slots are allotted to them, and that follow and hover around the cursor, dealing contact damage and blasting enemies with lasers. These two weapons, combined with the Adamantite Enchantment, worked very well for me during my playthrough, and a large reason I used them was because, like I said, they can get around the downsides of the accessory. Let's see why that is. You can see here that as I use the Twin Rings laser boomerang attack and create a light show for my NPCs to enjoy, even though the boomerangs are thrown out in a wider and wider spread, the lasers always converge on the cursor. So in principle, nothing really changes about the potential damage output of the weapon as long as you can track the enemy well with the mouse. The enemy in question is Skeletron Prime, and I mean, he just gets deleted by this thing. My victory attempt fight took under a minute, and there really isn't much else to say about that. When fighting the Destroyer, I opted for a different wizard enchantment combo as the focus of my setup. I still made use of the Twin Rang's left click with the base Adamantite Enchantment effect as my weapon though, as it still does solid damage and has strong AoE damage to deal with the hordes of probes you have to handle and can damage multiple of the boss's segments. Though even with it being a good weapon in this scenario, it doesn't make the fight any less annoying. I've never hated probes more. At least he drops a funny weapon that we can go right ahead and beat the next two bosses with. The Destroyer gun fires 3 destroyers at a time when used with the enhanced Adamantite Enchantment. Like with the Twin Rings, the increasing projectile spread doesn't affect this weapon very much, as regardless of what direction they're shot, the destroyers will just turn and go towards the cursor. Firing this weapon looks goofy as hell, and covers like a sixth of the screen when continuously shooting, but the damage is very high, and as you can imagine, the worm mosh pit has a pretty big area of effect, making it very easy to deal consistent damage to bosses. The one drawback is that the destroyers are kinda slow, so they aren't great at following quick-moving targets. Fortunately, the next two bosses in game progression are slow as f***. Both Lifelight and Plantera are for the most part very slow moving and in some phases completely immobile, making it very easy to keep the destroyers on them. They don't melt like Skeletron Prime did, but the destroyer gun does a good job of keeping the fights relatively concise, especially considering that single target damage isn't even what it's best at. See Plantera Tentacles. Obliterated. I don't know how much the Adamantite Enchantment boosts the damage of these weapons exactly, but it's not like it makes them overpowered or anything, although the Twin Ring setup does kinda annihilate Skeletron Prime. Regardless, more than anything, it's just a really fun item to mess around with, and can pull out all kinds of powerful combos to take on the Fargo's challenges with. Give it a try in your own playthroughs, and if you take a shot at any of these bosses with the setups featured, good luck. With that, I'm out of here. I will see you in the next one.